Andrew Greenblatt, sorry. And he's going to be talking about collective bargaining and why collective bargaining is important for the drivers. So just give it time and don't try to be distracted, because this is very, very, very important for everyone over here. So without further ado, I'm going to bring Mr. Andrew Greenblatt, and the floor is yours.
Thanks. Can I share my screen?
Absolutely. Go ahead.
Okay. Let me see if I can do that. This will stop others from screen sharing. That's all right.
I love your background, Andrew.
Oh, I love that background.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to
That's my shirt.
Oh, the shirt too. Great.
You should be good to, okay, perfect.
All right, you seeing me? Okay. All right, so before I get started, I got just a few slides. Here's my request just for the next 15, 20 minutes for this presentation. I'm going to cover a lot of ground, so if you've got questions, please type them into the chat. Larby, if you'd be kind enough to, at the end when it's time for questions, if you'd be kind enough to sort through the ones in the chat and pull out some questions for me, I'd appreciate it, okay?
Absolutely, sure.
All right, thank you very much. Let me introduce myself. First, my name is Andrew Greenblatt. God, it's so good to see all your faces again. Before the pandemic hit, I used to spend every other Thursday in the Uber offices helping drivers get access to benefits and deal with other problems they might have. I ran the benefits program for IDG for a bunch of years. Now it's got dental, vision, mental health, and things like that, and I did a lot of that work. Now, these days, what I've been doing is focusing all my attention on this right to bargain bill, and you'll see why in a minute. All that time I spent working with drivers, it became very clear to me that until we get to the heart of the problem, we're still just putting band-aids on the problem. And the heart of the problem is that the workers need more power, that the voice of the workers needs to not only be heard, but listened to and acted on. And until the companies have to listen to and act on it, they're not going to in the kind of big ways we need them to. So I turned my attention to this bill called the Right to Bargain Bill. It's pending in the New York State Legislature right now. And I'm going to walk through for the next 10, 15 minutes what's in the bill, why we're trying to do it, where it's at, and then I'll take questions. Okay, I'm going to jump in here. Let me start presenting the whole screen here. There we go, that's working. Okay, so here's the issue, right? Drivers and delivery workers, and the bill is not just for drivers, it's also for delivery workers, for app companies like DoorDash and Uber Eats and things like that. But drivers and delivery workers don't have many of the basic rights and are denied the power to make the changes. That's the problem, right? When the rights aren't there and the power to make those changes aren't there either. So can I move this out of the way? Let me see. I should make this small. There we go. I think after all this time, I know how to use Zoom. All right. So IDG and the IAM, the IAM is the International Association of Machinists, which is IDG's partner, have won some important victories for drivers over the years, right? So starting in the 1990s, we got the Black Car Fund. So if you get into a car accident, you get workers' compensation. They'll pay your medical bills. If you're disabled, they'll pay disability payments. By the way, the only place in America where that's true is New York, thanks to that law. There's minimum wage law here in New York City only. We were the first in the nation to do that. Now Seattle is following our footsteps, but that's it in the whole country. And we got dental, vision, and mental health benefits. I'm particularly proud of those. I wrote the bill that led to those benefits being enshrined in law, and I mentioned that because now I'm writing another bill. So I'm hoping to get two under my belt. You also have a grievance procedure. I heard a lot of people talking about their deactivations. The grievance procedure right now is just because of an agreement that IDG was able to get with Uber and Lyft. This law would make that mandatory and give the union more power to set better standards for the grievance procedures. So if you get deactivated right now, IDG can help you, but we want to make that a lot stronger. Now, here's the deal, though. Our brothers and sisters in delivery don't have any of these things. They don't have workers' comp. Think about how dangerous it is riding around New York City on a bicycle. If you get into an accident, nothing. You're on your own. Minimum wage, forget about it. They don't have it. Any kind of benefits like dental, vision, they don't have it. Grievance procedures, forget it. You get deactivated, you're on your own, nothing. But we don't even have some other important things like discrimination protections. I'm going to talk about this for a second because it's so unbelievable that this is true that I'm going to take a second on this. If you're an employee of a company and they are not allowed to discriminate against you on the basis of race, religion, country of origin, whether you're married, whether you have kids, all kinds of stuff. But when it comes to hiring an independent contractor, which is under the law for Uber and Lyft drivers, they can, right? So the idea was, coming back to like, if you want to hire a plumber and you're a racist, the government can't step in and tell you can't, you have to hire that plumber. But this isn't like that, right? This is like, there's tens of thousands of drivers, over 100,000 drivers in the state, and there are no discrimination protections at all. And we see how that plays out. We see how that plays out when customers are racist or against your religion and they start filing complaints based on made up things and stuff like that. This bill would, for the first time in American history, put those same protections that employees have into the law for Uber and Lyft and delivery workers, would have the exact same protections that employees have. It would also bump up the benefits. So, as proud as I am about the dental, the vision, the mental health, it's really just the beginning. It's a tiny, tiny slice of money. It's a 0.5% of every trip. So a typical employee gets about 10 or 15% of their wages in benefits. While Uber and Lyft drivers, it's a 0.5% of the ride goes towards the dental, the vision, the mental health. Once the law passes, the law would require that one of the things that has to be negotiated over is creating a real benefits program. The law sets up a nonprofit that'll administer those benefits. That nonprofit would be controlled by the union. So for the first time, we'll start getting real benefits for drivers. It also would put into the law real flexibility guarantees. So, right now, Uber and Lyft like to talk about how drivers can work when they want to and don't have to work when they don't have to. That's sometimes true, right? But I know everybody on this call has had times when you wanted to work and had problems with that. This law would put into the law flexibility guarantees for drivers and for delivery workers. It would also put into law unemployment insurance that works for gig workers. So the drivers have won some cases of unemployment insurance against Uber and Lyft, but Uber and Lyft have not really defended against those things for the thing that would just really knock most workers out. And that's under New York state law, you have to look for another job if you're unemployed. And it could be as simple as downloading an app from another company. So if you get deactivated from Uber, Uber can just say, download Lyft's app, boom, we don't have to pay you anything. And so what we've done is instead of putting workers into that system, we're creating a new system where we all know what really happens, right? If you're driving around with Uber and Lyft apps on at the same time, half or 70% of your money might be coming from Uber. And once they kick you off, you're working the same number of hours, but you're getting a lot fewer trips and your revenue goes way down. And so this system would recognize that and would pay workers for the lost earnings from that deactivation, even though you're still working for another app. It would also create a system for undocumented workers. This is much more important in delivery than in driving, but a lot of the people who do delivery work are undocumented and have no access to unemployment insurance at all. And so it create a separate fund for those workers with the same rights and the same benefits as every other worker has. So that would be the first in the country. And then here's the most important piece. All of the stuff that I was talking about would just be the beginning, because right now workers don't have any way to really bargain for wages and working conditions. Now, IDG has been talking to companies for years and getting some of this stuff, but there's no real meat behind that, right? Like you don't have a right to have a union like a typical employee does. So let me show you how we deal with this. So the first thing we do is right away, we set up a workers' comp program for the delivery workers. We already have it for the drivers. We set up the same kind of thing for delivery workers. We'd set up the unemployment insurance. That would happen as soon as the bill passes, the unemployment insurance starts to get set up. The discrimination protections kick in right away as soon as the bill gets signed into law, and the flexibility guarantee also. Then workers would get the right to form a union. This would again be a first in the nation that independent contractors would be allowed to do that. The law around independent contractors forming a union is tough. It's, you know, it was originally written with the idea like, you don't want all the plumbers in town to get together and say, hey, from now on it's $1,000 to fix a sink, or all the lawyers in town to get together and say, from now on it's going to be $10,000 to write a will. And unfortunately, drivers are being treated the same way when you have a really very different relationship with Uber and Lyft than somebody has with a plumber who just comes by once, fixes the sink, and you never see him again. This would give Uber and Lyft drivers, Via drivers, delivery workers, the right to form a union. Now, one union would be created for the drivers, one for delivery workers, because, you know, we have very different issues. Now, usually creating a union is very difficult. We saw what just happened with the Amazon workers down in Alabama, where, you know, even though the majority of the workers signed cards saying they wanted a union, when the vote was over, the union lost. And that was after the company did everything. It lied to the workers. It wouldn't let the union talk to the workers. It's very difficult to create a union. We created a much easier path where just by submitting the cards, it creates a union. In the end, the workers would choose which union they wanted. The machinists are hoping that you'll choose them to represent the drivers, and the transit workers union, which is like MTA and you know, subway workers and bus drivers and stuff like that, are hoping the delivery workers will pick them. But in the end, the workers get to choose. So once that union is formed, it would negotiate a minimum wage. The current New York minimum wage is locked in place for New York City until the new minimum wage kicks in. Of course, the New York would be the floor that we would negotiate up from, and then it would be spread statewide. It would set up those benefits that I talked about, real benefits, not just a little bit. It would make them come up with a serious grievance procedure with the union that they'd have to pay attention to. And then it can include anything else, safety training. You know, during the pandemic, you could imagine the union would be working on getting PPE for everybody, things like that. So anything else can be covered. So this bill exists. It doesn't have a number yet. It's in bill drafting, so it should come out by the end of the week. Senator Diane Savino is supporting it and putting it in the Senate. Assemblyman Robert Rodriguez in the Assembly is supporting it, and I think he's going to put it in the Assembly. Big labor unions are behind this, like the International Association of Machinists, the Transportation Workers Union. The AFL-CIO helped to draft the bill and was involved in all of that, and has been really supportive as well. All right, let me stop sharing my screen, and I'm going to...
Oh, sorry, Andrew, you got muted by accident. I'm sorry.
That mutes me.
Okay, perfect. Sorry. Go that last part again.
How dare you? Who muted me?
That was me by accident. I was trying to let people in.
Jackie.
Right.
I do apologize.
Great. I thank you, Andrew, for the terrific, amazing presentation that really speaks deeply about what collective bargaining is about and what it's going to be the action of all of us in this meeting, and also the drivers and all the social media out there to be engaged in this because it's important to them. We have a couple of questions on the chat.
Sure.
But I'm going to
before I take a question, let me just say one more thing here, and I think this is really important to understand. The whole point of this bill is to set a floor in which we build on for years and years and years, right? So when you look at workers in America, for the last 30, 50 years, workers that have been in unions, their lives get better and better and better over time. And workers who aren't in unions, their lives have been getting worse or staying flat. And so when you look at the things that are in our bill, it's not everything, right? It's not like, oh, we passed the bill, we're done, everybody take a vacation. It's, we pass the bill, we get a lot of these problems like workers' comp for the delivery workers and things like that. We get that set up as a base, and then we get to work. And then it's about, we get an agreement that's better than what workers have today. And then when that agreement expires, we get a better agreement. And then when that agreement expires, we get a better agreement. And you just keep going up and up and up. And that's how it works when you're in a union.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to do here. So don't look at the stuff we're doing and be like, oh, that's it, that's all we're getting. I think it's a lot of improvements. It's a really good first step. But if in 15, 20 years, that's it, then something went wrong. What really matters is getting workers the power to make a change in their lives.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrew. Jackie, I see 11 hands raised up. So Andrew, you ready for the questions and answer?
I am, and I would ask if people have a question about your own situation, like I have a deactivation or something like that. If you could just, if there's somebody take your hand down, I'm not sure there is, you can put it up later. Or if when you're called on, just say, I'm sorry, that was just something about me in particular. I'm going to ask that question at the end. That'd be great. Then you can raise your hand again when we're done with this question and answer.
Right. So how about break the ice with a question from the chat? Would that work?
Yeah, question from the chat would be great.
Okay, there you go. So if we unionize, do we have to start paying dues to the union?
So the way this bill is written is the union dues would actually be paid with a surcharge of 10 cents on each trip. So it's the customers that are paying for it. We thought drivers are struggling enough, and we didn't want to have to reach into drivers' pockets to take their money. And so we figured out a way that we could have the customers pay, and the customers are getting a benefit from this, right? They use the whole system. So paying a dime seems fair.
Right. Second question is, does it cover Long Island as well?
The whole state.
The whole state, there you go.
Buffalo, Long Island, Fredonia, if anyone's thinking about moving there.
Great.
Yep.
So Jackie, you can bring the first person to ask questions. I just want to remind everyone, this conversation is going to be about the bill, what Andrew just presented. So please keep it collective bargaining only question, and then we can go from there. And like Andrew mentioned, if you raise your hand by mistake and you have a different question than the topic, just excuse yourself from that. Go ahead, Jackie, bring the first person.
Yes. So again, guys, PPP questions, we're going to hold it off till later, okay? But right now, this is a much more important topic. PPP only gives you 20 grand. With this bill, it's going to earn you, okay, I'm not going to say $1 million, but it's going to give you a lot more rights to the job, okay? So guys, questions about this bill. The first guy is Ray. Ray, I'm going to unmute you. Please unmute. I click unmute. Ray, can you hear me?
I hear you. I'm well, first of all, great job. It's awesome. It's about time, I must say. However, I live in New Jersey, so none of this really affects me. And I guess you have to wait for later because I was suspended deactivated by Uber, and I really thought it was unfair. So I guess I'll wait for later. But great job.
Ray,
keep it going.
So let me tell you, we're already talking to the legislators in New Jersey as well. So what they said was, this sounds like a great idea. Do it in New York first, and we'll follow right behind them. And so that's true about New Jersey, and it's true about Connecticut. We're a little further behind in Massachusetts. We haven't lined up the legislators as much in Massachusetts. We tried, we had kind of a false start in Connecticut. We put in a bill that was just kind of a placeholder. We hadn't quite finished it yet, but the way things work in Connecticut, if you don't have your first draft in early enough, you're out for the whole year. So we put in the first draft, but we didn't get it done in time, and we had to pull it. But Connecticut's telling us that if we can get it done this year in New York, we can get it done next year in Connecticut as well. So it's New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Massachusetts. Thanks, Ray.
All right, this is awesome, man. The sister states. This is awesome. The tri-state area. The next question is coming from Barrington. Barrington, I'm going to unmute you and please ask your question. Barrington, I actually see you like put the mask on. And those of you that did ask the question, please raise your hand again. So you're going to be put at the back of the list. And Barry, can you? I'm gonna ask to unmute you again. Can you see it?
There you go.
Yeah, I said I'll wait until later. My question.
Okay.
All right. Thank you, Barrington.
The next one is Suleiman Abdulrahman. I'm gonna unmute you now.
And Larby, are you looking for ones in the chat? I see a bunch of people typing things in the chat too.
Hello?
Yeah, we'll get to those
What
too.
is your question, Suleiman?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have a question about BBB loans. So I'm gonna wait like to the end. I think you said that.
Yes, yes. So re-raise your hand, okay? Thank you.
Thank you. Larby, you got any that came in on the chat that's about collective bargaining?
So actually,
You're
one
on
guy
mute,
did
Larry.
ask me a question directly. He says, "How much will the minimum wage be if it gets passed?"
So the bill will set a statewide minimum wage this by through collective bargaining. It starts by setting the wage, or it doesn't start. It keeps in place the city's minimum wage until the bargaining is over and we set a higher wage for the whole state. So how high is that going to be? I don't know. Like, when you form a union, you don't know what you're going to get in the end, but the companies know it's going to be higher than what we got now. No union bargains for lower wages. You bargain for higher wages.
So if that's the case, does that mean that those that drive in Long Island will get the same rates as the one that drives in New York?
No, it's not clear whether we'll have one statewide rate or we'll have different rates for different parts of the state. So right now, the minimum wage law for employees in the state is it's higher in New York City. It's like if you work in a McDonald's or in a, whatever, any place that has pay minimum wage. New York City right now is the highest, and then around New York City is a little bit lower, and then upstate's a little bit lower than that. And so it's possible that there could be 3 tiers like that. So, New York City has some licensing requirements and things like that that the rest of the state doesn't have. So we might negotiate a higher wage for New York City to help cover those licensing. You got drug testing, you got all kinds of stuff, different kinds of insurance you have to have. So it might be different for New York City than other places.
Awesome. Thank you
Great.
very much, Andrew.
Hold on, Jackie. I'm gonna ask Andrew a question from the chat from Ashfaq. Can you please explain what dental insurance is available, and if we become union member, as an example, can we get implants or root canal with that?
Yep. So the dental plan is quite good for okay, a couple of things. First of all, definitely get the dental plan. Oh my God, it's like free dental care. So get the dental plan. It's not, but not everything is free. And so the way it works is it's like checkups and cleanings and stuff like that are free. And then basic things like I've got a cavity are really cheap, like $5 to get a cavity filled. Complicated things like root canal or implants and stuff like that tends to be like half price. So that can be real money though, right? So it depends on what you're getting. And I don't have all the prices in front of me, but it's like basic care is really, really inexpensive or free. And then the more complicated stuff is just much cheaper than if you didn't have the insurance. To set up for that, you can go to driversbenefits.org and just fill out the form there. If you're on any of the email lists for IDG, you'll see things in your email about the vision, the mental health, and the dental. And if you sign up for one, you're signing up for all of them. And so they're all good. I'll just take a second to talk about the vision. When I ran the program, I tested the program by getting these glasses. So it's not, yeah. Thanks, Michelle. It's the real deal. So I didn't pay a penny for these glasses. You can get more advanced things if you want to pay for it, like progressive lenses or whatever. But just like basic, good quality glasses are free in the vision. And the mental health has been phenomenal. IDG's been running the mental health. And it's been helping. I mean, I don't have to tell anybody on this call how hard the last year has been. IDG has been there with counselors and social workers, group meetings, one-on-one counseling to help people through what has been like the hardest year of my life. And I'm sure the hardest year for a lot of people on this call. It's been crazy. So sign up for those benefits, take advantage of them. They've been really helpful.
Great. Jackie, before we go to the next person, I just want to take this one because it seems that I'm going to take one question from the chat and then one question from the mic. But let me ask this one, Andrew. In New York, the TLC regulates the drivers in the 5 boroughs, and the drivers are guaranteed an hourly wage. Uber and Lyft began to not allow drivers to log on, which means because of the utilization rate, how this is going to affect the drivers. And the question is again from Long Island.
Gotcha. So, so there's like what's going to happen when the bill passes, and then what's going to happen after we negotiate some new kind of deal, right? So as soon as the bill passes, it'll lock in place the current minimum wage. The reason the companies lock you out is because if there's too many people driving around not with passengers, it drives up how much the minimum wage is for the trips, and so they lock people out. That driving things up won't happen anymore, and so the companies have told us they're going to get rid of the lockout as soon as the bill passes. Now, what's going to happen when there's a new system in place? It depends on how the union wants to set it up and what they negotiate with companies. And so, you know, the one thing we've heard over and over and over again is the lockouts are driving people crazy, right? If you're counting on working because you got to pay your phone bill or pay your rent, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to drive tonight. I'm going to make some money and get that taken care of. And you go and you turn on the app and they say, sorry, you can't work. Like that can mess you up. And so we've heard that, and my expectation is that the union would not agree to something that allowed the lockouts to continue. But I can't tell you exactly what it's going to look like because that's up to you. That's up to the workers and their union. We didn't write into the law telling you what you're going to do. We wrote into the law giving you the ability to form a union so you can create the kind of minimum wage that you need. But yeah, my guess is it won't have a lockout, and the lockout should go away as soon as the law passes.
Great. Jackie, go ahead with the next person, please.
Yes, actually, I'm going to take one person first, and then before we get back, so we're going to do back and forth that way. The next question is from Donovan Grant. Donovan Grant, I'm going to unmute you and please ask your question.
Okay, thank you for taking me, right? Hey, listen, yeah, I've been driving for Uber 2016, right? And I have a good driving record with them. However, due to the coronavirus, right, and I haven't driven for them for almost a year, right? And
oh, sorry, I accidentally unmuted you. Please unmute yourself again. I do apologize. There you go. Okay.
Yeah, so yeah, like I said, I've driving for them since 2016, right? And due to the coronavirus, I haven't driven for them in quite a while, like over 6 months. So they deactivated my account and said they pending background check. So the background check took a while. When it came in, they said the reason why they deactivated because I got a speeding ticket in the state of Virginia in 2015 before I start driving for them. So, and
actually, Donovan, so you know, I'm guessing your question is about deactivation. And Andrew, the way I want to ask this question is going to be a little different, right? So, with this collective bargaining bill passed, what can we do about deactivations?
Yeah. So Donovan, if your question is particularly about your situation, at the end of this meeting, they're going to talk about how to help individual drivers. I don't work on that. I'm just working on this whole bill. So I'm going to answer Jackie's question about, you know, the big picture, but don't leave the call. Like later, they're going to be talking about deactivations of PPP. Okay. All right. Thank you, Donovan. So Jackie, so right now your deactivation procedure that IDG was able to negotiate with Uber and Lyft was just, you know, they negotiated it, they talked about it, they came up with the best that they could. This law would change that and say, no, it's not that the companies can come to an agreement with the union, it's that they have to. And if the companies don't agree to a fair enough system, it goes to an arbitrator and to a state board. And so instead of the company saying, well, we'll let some people in, we'll just do what we want, whatever, the union will have the power to set up a real fair system. And if the company won't agree to it, the state can make them do it. And so that's the difference.
So, bless you, Andrew. And thank you for that question, actually, because there is a lot of questions in the chat talking about deactivation. So as you all know right now, Uber and Lyft, their deactivation system, excuse my French, but it's kind of BS, right? Yes, it's a little agreement IDG made, but with this new bill passing, we're gonna make them sit on the table with us and discuss it. If we don't, like Andrew said, then we're gonna have the state come down on them. Okay.
Right. So that's the difference. I want to really stress that for a minute. What IDG has done over the last 5 years, I think, is amazing. But they haven't had the ability to say, that they haven't had that hammer, right? To say, boom, if you don't do this, then something's going to happen. Well, what's going to happen? So you organize, you negotiate, you protest. You can see the picture behind me, right? You get everybody to come out to a meeting, and that helps. But in the end, what you need is something that steps in and say, look, if you're not going to listen to us, we're going to make you listen to us. And what this bill has is arbitration. If you're not going to come up with a fair grievance procedure, then we're going to go to arbitration, and the arbitrator is going to tell you, the way the arbitration is set up to work is the company puts in their plan, we put in our plan, and the arbitrator has to pick one. And so if the company's putting in an unfair plan and we're putting in a fair plan, the arbitrator will pick our plan. And then they got to live with that. So it's like, okay, companies, you want to do things that aren't fair? We'll go to arbitration, and the arbitration will pick us because they want to do what's fair. And then ultimately the state has to approve it. And so if something goes wrong with the arbitrator, the state goes, no, you can't do that. It's got to be something fair. And you start over and you get another arbitrator. So that's the difference. And that's why I think things are going to get better and better.
All right. Thank you, Andrew. So Larby, would you like to ask?
Jackie, I have an important question, and I want to flag this one up to all the drivers to hear this question. Let's talk about flexibility, Andrew, right here. Would this bill guarantee the flexibility of the drivers?
Yeah. So what the law says is that the companies can't mandate any hours, any shifts. They can't tell you when you have to work, and if you don't, you're going to get deactivated. It makes all of that illegal. As for the lockouts, which is a little different when they tell you that you can't work, the companies have said, once the way New York City's minimum wage works goes away, they're going to get rid of the lockouts because the companies want more drivers on the road, right? There's never a time when the companies want less drivers because they only pay when there's trips anyway. So the more drivers, the shorter the wait time for the passengers, and so they never want fewer drivers unless it costs the money. And under this system, it'll get rid of that. So I think the lockouts go away. What the law does do is it guarantees that they can't make you work. They can't say, hey, you're not working enough hours, or hey, we need a bunch of people Saturday night. If you don't work, a 3-hour shift Saturday night, we're gonna deactivate you. All that would be illegal.
Awesome. Actually, Michelle has a question. Michelle, what is your question?
Hey, Andrew. So
Michelle, how have you been?
I'm good, thank you, Andrew. So my question is, a lot of what they're doing now based on deactivation, let's say what Donovan was asking about was the fact that he's got a ticket from way back when. Now, if they are going to use old background check information, would they have to go through the union before they can lay off that driver or deactivate that driver and do an arbitration at before they can do this process like all unions do? You have to go through the union before you fire or lay off a driver. Will they have to go through the union, and the union would protect the driver and they would have to make their case?
Yeah, so the law doesn't get that specific. The law just says that the union and the company have to create a fair grievance procedure, and if the company won't play ball, it goes to arbitration. But it doesn't say exactly what that plan is going to be. You know, we wanted to create a system where the workers can form a union and have the power to fight for what they want, not, you know, I figured it all out and here it is, and now you'll live with that forever. So if that's the way you guys want it to be, then that's what you negotiate for. But it's not in the law that way. I mean, nothing's in the law that way. It just says broadly there will be a fair grievance procedure.
Okay, and so the drivers now, one of the main parts that I wanted you to touch home on is the fact that they cannot take away the flexibility within the union, which would happen if they become an employee, right? Which is what we're fighting, to be able to have the drivers work whenever they want. So this law, would that be the set in stone for the driver, that they will be able to continue a flexible schedule?
So the law would guarantee a flexible schedule. It wouldn't make you an employee, this law.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it wouldn't make you an employee. It would give you the guaranteed right to flexibility, but not make you an employee.
And that's why we drivers drive. Okay, great. I'll give it back to Jackie.
All right.
It's Larry. Thank you, Michelle. Mariana Diallo, go ahead and ask your question, please.
Hi guys, my question, I think another guy asked that question. My question was like, I moved from New York to New Jersey now, and I was thinking the other day, how this being IDG member gonna help me being in New Jersey, driver in New Jersey, how that gonna help me, and the union now that I see, how that gonna come in effect with me driving in New Jersey. And another thing that I think someone's already asked too was about deactivation. And another thing was, since I moved from New York to New Jersey, it was since March, the 1st of March. And Uber, I don't know, for some reason, they say I have to do a background check. And to me, it's not fair to move from New York to New Jersey over here, and I don't have any issues since I have been driving with them. Mm-hmm. My record is good with them. My rate is good. Everything is good. And now I move here expecting to work. All of a sudden, they're telling me, okay, we have to run a background check. Since March until now, I haven't seen that result, and I'm not working.
Okay.
So Mariama, so thanks for asking the question. So yeah, we have been talking a little bit about New Jersey. I answered very briefly, but it's New Jersey would follow New York. So New York would have to pass first. Just, and not for any legal reason, just we've been talking to legislators in New Jersey, and they say, oh, they just want New York to go first. New York is just the biggest state around. And so New York, New Jersey, and Massachusetts are waiting for us to take the first step. But New Jersey and Connecticut and Massachusetts should go pretty quickly after that. The grievance procedures, we have been talking about the grievance procedures and how that has to be set up. It's not in the law what it'll be, just that it has to be fair. I have seen in the chat, a bunch of people have been asking, when is this going to happen? Great question. We're not sure. So just the way the New York State Legislature works is they meet until the middle of June, and then they take a long break and they come back a little bit in the fall. So we're hoping we're going to get it done by the middle of June. We will probably be calling on drivers to support the bill in small ways and large. So small ways would be like calling your senator, calling your assembly member, and asking them to support the bill as soon as we have a bill number, and that should be by the end of the week. I think Aziz, you've been talking about having a rally. Is that June 2nd still? Is that still going on? Yeah, June 2nd, thank you. Hey Aziz, what time is it? Just kidding. And so like a big part of this is going to be, do drivers really want this? So like I stand up, I say yes, and they say, well, how do you know? And I'm like, well, because I've been working with drivers for years. But that's very different than what you see behind me, right? Like when drivers really come out and say we want this, then that's when the legislators pay attention. So like, I'm a nice guy, but like, I'm not, 1,000 drivers. And so me going there and talking to legislators is helpful. I can explain what's going on like I explained it here today, but that's not how they make their decision. I mean, it's part of it, right? Like if I went with some crazy idea that wasn't gonna work, they would say, hey, Andrew, that's a crazy idea, it's not gonna work. But in the end, it's like, oh, okay, that could work. All right, is that what drivers want? And so they're gonna need to hear from you. So that's gonna be the next step. And so watch your email and texts and there'll be announcements of meetings and so on. And please come to that June 2nd rally. I'm sure you'll get a lot more information about that as it gets closer. But we need drivers to turn out. Like that's going to be the key.
Sure. Yeah, Andrew, I'm going to do a time check right here. It's 7:50. Hopefully, we're going to take more questions from the drivers. I know this should be more engaging conversation with all the drivers. However, I understand that also drivers are eager to hear a couple answers from the next topic. But let's actually continue and take one more question from the audience. And then I'm going to turn to the chat and take a couple from there. So, J.O. Pierre, go ahead. And I think you misspelled it, Jacob Pierre or J.O. Pierre. Go ahead and ask your question, please. Unmute yourself and ask your question. Otherwise, I'm going to go to the next person. Going once, going twice. Next person. Raj, go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question. Raj, you're responsive? No. Okay, next person will be just an iPhone. If you see a button popping up on your screen, okay, I think Raj is here.
Yeah. Hey, how are you? I think you hear me, right?
Yes,
so, yeah. So question is like most of the driver were owning a car with plate, registration, and everything, right? So how does this calculate if we go through the the employment system? So how do we cover like a minimum wage is, I know right now a minimum wage is $15 per hour in New York City. How we cover then? Because most of the driver I know, they spend money in a Suburban, Escalade, like a big fancy car. How do they cover? What, I mean, how do they make money? Because already we're in a tough situation. We don't know what happened after COVID is finished, because right now, few of drivers, they're getting unemployment. I'm not taking unemployment. Right now it's busy. I saw that it's super busy, but I believe when this unemployment is done, all of the drivers jump on this market to try to make money.
Raj, if you don't mind the question, because I'm sorry, time is running out. Let's go ahead with the question.
So question is, so then how do this cover? Because Uber hiring a new driver, so how do they cover then these minimum wage? How do they survive this driver? What do you think? And
so is your question about minimum wage being too low, or is your question?
Yeah, minimum wage being too low, because minimum wage being too low. Yeah.
Right. So in the end, so what's going to have to happen is when the union is formed, the union is going to have to bargain for higher wages, and that's what unions do. And so when you're in a union, your union fights for higher wages, and that's why people in unions make more money than people who aren't in unions. I can't tell you exactly what they're going to be able to get. So like your question is, so like what you want to know, I can't answer, which is what's the new minimum wage going to be? The answer is it's going to be what the union can bargain for. It's about a bunch of things. It's about the money, it's about the benefits, and like if it's more benefits, it's less wages. If it's more wages, it's less benefits. Like this is how the negotiations work when you're in a union. But it's always about it gets better and better and better and better and better. Unions never agree to cuts in pay and cuts in benefits and things like that unless the industry is collapsing. So that's what we're going to do. It's going to be whatever the minimum wage is this time. It's going to be higher next time. Whatever it is next time, it's going to be higher after that, and so on. That's what we're doing here.
Jackie, I have a question from the chat.
Yes, there's one question. It says, will there be at least a few drivers on the union board to help you guys? I do not want the choices being made by non-drivers or at least previous drivers that did the work.
Yep. So in the end, that's up to the union, how the union is structured. So when you pick your union, you're going to make sure that that's the case. I know that the machinists are looking to set up a board of drivers. That's what they're looking to do. And then there'd probably be, one or two people from the machinist union already to also help guide that. I will let you know, I would not be on that board. I'm not a driver. I've never been a driver. I'm not trying to be on the board, and I shouldn't be on the board. It should be drivers, and so that's the plan. Another union who might try to get you to sign a card might have a different plan, but the machinist plan is to have things be run by the drivers.
Right. Thank you, Jackie, for the question. Let's take a question from the audience. Again, I'm doing a time check. So one question, and please make it quick. iPhone, go ahead and answer your, ask your question. All right, iPhone is not available. All right, let's go to the next person.
Yeah, hello.
Yes, go ahead.
All right, hi.
Hi. State your name and your question, please.
All right, my name is Alpha, and thank you for. Just my question is I've been deactivate from Uber and Lyft since now 2 years, and the thing is that I did the apples from Rich Malik, but since now it's take 3 to 4 months since now I didn't get no deactivation. I want to know what.
I'm sorry. I just want you to ask the question that is regarding the topic. We're talking about collective bargaining, and there is a bill that we're working on right now. So you have a question about that, or just the activation?
No. For the deactivation. Sorry.
Okay. We will answer question for the activation. The next question will come from. I'm sorry. I'm trying to rush this because I want everybody's hand to be answered. Ray, you back again. If you have the question related to the topic, go ahead and answer. Ask your question.
No, it's just how if New York doesn't go through with this by June, do you think we have to wait a whole nother year? Because when they come back in September or whenever the heck they come back, I'm sure they'll have quote unquote other priorities. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I don't know. So I think it depends on how much noise we can make. So the politicians respond to pressure, that's the bottom line. And so if we can put enough pressure on between now and the middle of June, they'll do it now. If we can't and they go home, then we have to put pressure on them to come back in September and make sure we're one of the things they handle. So by the way, Ray's absolutely right. What happens after September is they do come back for short periods of time to do just a handful of things at a time. And so if you can't get it done by the middle of September, then you gotta be one of the things that they feel like they have to take care of. And that's a matter of, how much noise can you make? How much pressure can you put on them? I think we're all looking at you, Aziz.
Hey, Andrew, I don't want to miss a question in the chat, which I think we really need to, some drivers really don't understand how much the real minimum wage is. And the question I see in the chat, sorry, Labi, for just jumping in.
No, go ahead. I'm actually fine.
I see because if a lockout issue with $15 an hour, I do not see how higher rates would stop that. And 15 is too low with all the costs that drivers has, insurance, car, etc. And I think this driver doesn't realize the real minimum wage that they're getting in New York right now. So can you sort of explain to him that that's actually not our minimum wage?
Yep, sure. So the way the minimum wage in New York City works is they take, all right, let me back to just for a second. So one of the problems with setting a minimum wage is a lot of your time working, you're not engaged with any passenger, right? You're driving around waiting for your next assignment, but that's working, right? Like if you're working in a grocery store at checkout and no one is checking out and you're staying there waiting for the next person, they don't not pay you for that time. Like you're at work, they pay you. So with being a driver, if you're waiting for your next customer, that's work. You're not home with your kids watching TV, you're working. And so the problem is you may have 2 or 3 apps on at a time. And so this is even worse with delivery where there's a lot more apps. And so, okay, so who's gonna pay you for that time? Like which company pays you for when you're waiting for the next thing? And so the way that New York City worked it out with the minimum wage was they said, okay, let's figure out how much time you kind of typically spend driving around, and then make sure that the amount of time you actually spend with a customer is enough to cover the time when you're not with a customer. So if it's, let's just say it's half the time you're driving around, half the time you have a customer. So if the minimum wage is going to be $15, And it's actually higher because they want to pay you a little extra for sick days and things like that. So it's a little over $17. I think it's $17.22. If someone wants to correct me, it is $17.22. Oh, all right. It's been a year since I've looked at those numbers. So it's about $17.22. So if they say it's got to be $17.22, then they've got to make sure you make in the half the time that you're working enough to pay the other half, and altogether it's $17.22. Then you also get paid per mile to help pay the expenses, because you got to buy gas, you got to pay for your car, you got to pay for insurance, you got to pay for all that stuff. And so they add all of this up, and then they average it out, and on average, you're going to make about $17.22 an hour after expenses. Now, that's different than working in a store, because the way you work is different, right? So in a store, you punch in, they pay you $15 an hour, you punch out. When you're driving, look, if you're, you know, in the middle of or not the middle, if you're at the way end of Staten Island, and it's 3 in the morning on a Thursday night, and you turn on your app, no one needs a lift. People out there have cars, they're not going anywhere at 3 in the morning. And so you can put your app on for 3-4 hours and you're not gonna make anything. On the other hand, it's rush hour in Manhattan. You pick somebody up, you drop them off, you pick up the next person, you drop them off, pick up the next person, you drop them off. It's work, 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 work. The way the thing is set up is you average those things together, and on average, you're gonna make the $17.22 plus cover all of your expenses. Now, what's the new system gonna be like for New York? I don't know. You got to bargain that. That's what your union's going to do, but it's going to be better than that, because unions never accept a step down. It's always a step up, a step up, a step up. Does that answer your question, Michelle? You just nodded.
The driver's question, yes.
Yeah, that did. Thank you, Andrew. And I'm sure it's 8:01 right now. So Andrew, we thank you very much, but let's make it with the statement. We're gonna see you again, hopefully soon. But just give the driver the statement right now from you.
Yeah, I just want to say, in the end, whether this happens or not, it's going to be up to you. So my part was to kind of craft this thing and put it together, working with a whole team of people, team of lawyers and other folks. But it doesn't matter what I come up with. It matters what you can make happen. Yeah. And so that's going to be about you reaching out to your legislators and letting them know what you want, and coming out to the rally on June 2nd. And in the end, then you get the power to have your union and get the kind of changes you want over time. And so, I mean, I don't know if people on this call have been driving for a long time, but you know, when Uber first came here, it was a much better job. They paid a lot more money, and then things got worse and worse and worse and worse. And when you get a union, that's when things turn around and they get better and better and better. And that's what this bill is about. So turn out, call your legislator.
There you have it. Thank you, Andrew Green,
thank you very much
for being here. Thank you very much, and we hope to see
Thanks
you.
for having me.
Keep up the good work, and we will reach out to you. Thank you. All right. So, like you guys all heard, gonna go right here and just give join the rally to demand drivers' right to unionize, like what Andrew was talking about. And all of your question will be answered in the order to come that we have on the chat. We will take that, all the questions that you have, and answer them on the chat as well. So I think it's safe to say that this is very important right now for all of us, guys. I cannot put enough emphasis on how important for drivers to have the right to unionize. So Fauci Building, you got the address, 310047 Avenue. That's in Long Island City. If you don't know the Fauci Building, it's okay. Ask me, I will tell you where it is. June 2nd, 9 a.m. We're gonna be there. So join the